culture?
Yeah, that'd be great, Nicola. Thank you for stepping up.
Okay, so you've because I don't have any slides, you've worked out that I'm freestyling. So with regard to change in a culture, we have assessed this as not just a policing priority. So this, when we speak to a lot of organisations, they see it as a policing priority, they see it as an operational issue, and we are talking from a security perspective to other security leads in those areas, or indeed equality and diversity leads. So we're talking, in some terms, we're talking quite narrowly to other organisations about what they're doing. At Transport for London, we are seeing this as a whole organisation issue, and it relates from the point at which somebody comes onto the system. What does our system look like? How are our staff trained? How is our environment designed to be considerate of people of all needs? And of course, that's what our Austrian colleagues were saying around this not being a gender specific issue, but considering who is our user, how do they use the network, what do they see when they come onto the network, what do they feel when they come onto the network, does that change at different times of the day, and the perception between traveling at night and traveling during the day being kind of the main example there. But who else is using the service? How do they interact with those, and the kind of overall environment that we create? And so there are a number of considerations that we've put in place as a result of that. So as an example, the Mayor of London has a directive that there is nothing to be advertised with regard to unhealthy food, food that has too much sugar. And so we cannot advertise as London Underground cake or chocolate or crisps or things that are unhealthy. But until we established this programme, we were able to advertise a lady in a very high pair of heels, a very tight pair of jeans, and a little bra standing in a very provocative way, and would say that was a jeans advert. So even that, we've gone right back to our advertising principles, how we present women on our network, and really challenging, is this the right environment that we want to create an environment where people feel safe to report, to see behaviours as being challenging. And so that's kind of one of the lower level behaviours. We've also done an awful lot around education to members of the public as to what is unacceptable. And that includes a lot of conversation around what many people would call banter, kind of low level joke. And that low level joke, the impact that can have, how that is perceived, how that can make people feel. And indeed, it isn't just about our travelling public. We've done a lot of posters to those travelling public around what we mean by those behaviours, such as the catcalling, the banter, the staring, and education around that. But we also go into schools. So that is part of our established programme. We've done that for many, many years. We go into schools when they're in their final year of primary school, before they start travelling on their own to secondary school, to teach them the right behaviours, how to respect our staff, how to use a ticket, and also how to report these kind of issues and how they should be behaving on our network.
Nicola, thank you so much for
Okay, thank
expanding
you.
on the cultural change that you're fostering at Transport for London. It's especially the part about advertising, I think, is really a really key way to make it known that those sorts of behaviors aren't acceptable in the public space. So I have seen that Laurence Deglain has joined us from the French Directorate General for Infrastructure, Transport and Mobility. So thanks for hopping on the call a little early. Can I pass the floor to you?
Of course. I will briefly speak about some of the things we do regarding to fighting violence against women in public transport in France. So both in railway network, but also in urban transport networks. The main tool we use at the ministry is an annual report on gender-based violence in public transport. So we can move to the next slide. And the origin of this annual report dates back in 2016 with a law. It's called Loi Savary in France, that established the principle of an annual report on gender-based violence on transport networks, but without really specifying who was responsible for drawing it up. It was further detailed in 2019 with another law that provided with a clarification of tasks. And this law entrusted transport operators with the task of drawing up an annual report on gender-based violence in their respective networks. And the operators' data are sent to the ministry, who receive the report and is responsible for producing a summary and making it public. So this was a big job to putting this together. And the first publication of the report happened on in 2021. So it mentioned the data of 2020, which was actually really marked by a COVID context. So it's important when one reads this data to keep that in mind. A second edition was released in last year, and we are now preparing the third edition. So that will be based on 2022 data. And the main characteristic of this report is that it is based on data provided by transport operators and not data provided by the police. So it's interesting when we have these reports to compare it with data provided by the police, and we can most of the time see that the trend converge. So I have put up together one of the key figures of the last report. So we can actually see that 157 networks participated last year. So you have, I will not go into details, as I understand that we don't have much time, but you will be able to see the breakdown of the type of networks and the size of the networks that answered. And it also shows that nearly 1/3 of the respondent entity have seen sexual violence, and that there was an increase compared to 2020. So we can move on. Then if we go a bit further into the details, we could actually notice more or less 3,500 sexual gender-based assaults reported by operators or brought to their attention by passengers, among which 34% were sexual assaults with contact, 34% with non-contact, 31% were gender-based assaults, and 2% of an unknown nature. So it is quite a significant number, and the total amounts to 4.5 per 10 million trips. But again, this is the offenses known by the operators, so it doesn't mean that it corresponds to the globality of the offense. And among those offenses, the Paris urban area alone accounts for nearly 3/4 of the breaches. So you can see that it's the phenomenon is quite present in big cities, but not only. Another axis of analysis was to actually try to know when and where do the violations occurs. So that was another important finding of the studies, that they occur mainly in a train or a suburban train, so RER, which is the suburban trains in Paris. Then comes the metro, then comes the bus, and in last position come tramway. So this is what is put on the left side of the slide, and on the right side of the slide, you can see that violations of all kinds are committed mainly in the afternoon and at night. So as you can see, the upper part is much less significant. Then you have an increase in the morning, and the peaks are in the afternoon and later at night. Another axis of analysis that shows a general trend is that there is an increase that's being shown in violence, in sexual violence, and that the majority of victims are women. But it's important to know that women are not the only ones. So indeed, they are very much affected, but men can be victims also. So that was briefly a summary of the figures that were shown by the report. At the end, you will have the link if you want to see to have a closer look at the report and see all the details. So sorry, the report is in French, but at least you will have access to the data. And as a second part, I wanted to speak about examples of actions that have been implemented to try to tackle violence against women, or actually to make transport conditions safer for women. So apparently,
it looks like there's
a little bit of a problem. So maybe I will continue. What was okay? Yeah, that's the one. So a first type of tool that the ministry has tried to help promoting is the exploratory walks. So it's in French we say marche exploratoire, and in its principle is to mobilize a group of volunteers, mainly women, but is not necessarily restricted to women, who can walk through a given area to identify the space and the conditions that generate insecurity. So and as an outcome of this walk, a survey report with a recommendation on various things that can be done, such as act on the lighting, on cleanliness, on the signal, is sent to the authorities in order to help them to draw an action plan. And the development of this initiative has been supported by the ministry. So we encourage a network to develop this practice. So for that, a booklet has been published in 2020, which contains a guide and also a survey booklet. So questions that can be followed, or on which groups can pay attention during the walks. And secondly, a video presenting the system has been actually there is a typo I hadn't seen. So a video has been released on the website of the ministry to present the system. And actually, the ministers have also participated to one of the works in the first semester. So this is one of the tools that that we have been trying to develop. And a second initiative that we have also been working on, and on which we have been trying to help the network, is the what we could call get off on demand, or descente à la demande in French. And we can describe the system by offering vulnerable publics the possibility to get off in between two bus stops in order to bring them closer to their destination, so that it actually diminishes the time in during which women or vulnerable public have to walk between the bus and their home, for example, at night. So in order to allow this initiative to develop, we had to actually modify the law, because before the buses could stop only at certain points. So the regulation has been adapted to allow buses to stop in between get-off points. So that was done in 2020. And the get-off on demand can be deployed at the initiative of mobility authorities. So that has also been established by a decree of October 2020. This tool is meant to be a response to the feeling of insecurity experienced by bus users late at night, in order to limit their exposures, as I was saying. And it has been tested by a dozen of transport networks. So, as for exploratory works, the ministry has published a guide of recommendation and a video presenting how this new service can be implemented and promoted. And most recently, in September, on the 1st of September 2023, the get off on demand was made general in the Paris area. So that was it for the two tools I wanted to mention. And as I said earlier, I've put you the references of the details on everything I've mentioned, that you can find on the ministry website.
Thank you so much, Laurence, for your presentation. We have 5 minutes before the break now for a question and answer discussion session between our panelists. So also, if you have any questions for Transport for London, I'll just check the chat real quick. I'm not seeing anything from the audience, but what I found very interesting, Laurence, what you just explained about needing to make changes to the legal framework to allow the buses to stop, to use this get off on demand program. And being from the government, maybe this is too big of a question, but how can legal changes help transport operators combat gender-based violence, I guess?
Well, that was actually an example on what could be done from a legal or regulatory point of view to give more flexibility, because especially in France, the legal framework can be a little rigid or difficult to maneuver, or to sometimes makes it difficult to implement new initiative. So the work that has been done with the sector and with the operators allowed to identify the problem and to act on the regulation to allow more flexibility and to actually ease the conditions that it was actually meant to facilitate the traffic. That the fact that buses are allowed to stop only at a certain point has actually had a purpose, and in order to tackle another issue, we had to adapt the law, and that's what has been done.
Thank you, Laurence. Nicola, maybe would you like to say a few words about your cooperation with the authorities or with the government bodies on this topic?
Yeah, I certainly agree that legal framework has a huge impact, and particularly on how we quantify how we see crimes and how we then take action. So as an organisation, we do a lot of lobbying to change legislation from a government and national level as to the action, the impact, best outcomes for victims, but also we work with our policing partners in terms of how they classify. So some of the very low level unwanted sexual behaviour, sexual harassment things would otherwise not be classified as the certain level to reach a sexual offence. And that's something we're working with to understand the data in more detail, because we do need to understand those lower level offences in order to prevent the more serious ones from occurring.
Thank you, Nicola. And I think France could maybe even be an example of that, because it's a recent legislation that they call it outrage sexiste. So it's sexual remarks, right, Laurence, that are now considered punishable by authorities, by police.
Yeah, and actually it was yeah, you spoke about the recent piece of legislation that actually increased the offense and the sanctions for outrage sexiste that was already present in penal law. So this wasn't a new definition, but there was also a willingness to further sanction this kind of violence. So actually, the government is nowadays taking special attention to the issues of violence against women, including in the transport sector.
Thank you, Laurence. I see we have one question from the chat, and we have 1 minute. When it is asking if it's possible to create initiatives, even if there is no law supporting them, as long as it's not conflicting, such as an internal policy or mechanism by the agency. Well, and I think the answer is yes, because Nicola has already been explaining a lot about the different measures that she's Transport for London has put in place, and our previous panelists also were talking about measures that they put in place that weren't necessarily legal obligations. I don't know if any of the transport operators wish to take the floor for a response. Well, that must mean that yes, I have a response in the chat that says, yes, thank you, Laura. So I think I spoke well. With this in mind, it is now 16:10, so we're now back on schedule, and we have a break. We have a 20-minute break. We have, as part of the Train to Be Equal project, we have the UIC Human Resources Training and Talent Development team, and they explained how important it is when you're especially doing online work that you take real breaks. So I encourage you all to stand up, walk around, don't look at your screen, so that you come back refreshed and ready to learn, because we have a wonderful guest here with us. It's Stand Up Against Street Harassment, and they are going to help us all become actors in this fight against gender-based violence. So yes, health break now, and I'll see you all back here in 20 minutes.